In this video, I'm going to show you how to cook a top sirloin steak in cast iron. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, and welcome to Dennis from Scratch. Let's cook some steak. So, I'm going to start off with a marinade. I'm going to go over the ingredients in just a second. But to save on dishes, instead of kind of grabbing measuring cups and stuff, I'm just going to use a mason jar, which has some little measuring lines over here. So if I want a quarter cup something, I just go to the bottom line. It's just going to save on dishes, make our cleanup faster. So let's talk about ingredients. First off, I've got 2 cloves of garlic, and you'll need 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. This one's kind of big, so I'm just using 2. And these are peeled. So if you want to know how to peel garlic really fast, then go ahead and check out my video on garlic asparagus, which is linked up over here. It goes over how to cut these and peel them really fast. And then it's also a really good recipe to cook with the steak. That's actually what I'm going to be eating today, is the garlic asparagus with the steak. So a really good option. Go ahead and check that video out too. So next up, we'll need a 1/4 cup of olive oil. This is extra virgin olive oil, which means it's going to have a really robust olivey taste. It's going to be really good. But it's also a really good brand. And that's important when you're looking for olive oil, because the regulations on olive oil are really light, and you can mix other oils in there, even ones that are, really bad for you or can't really be digested well, and they don't have to call it anything. They can just call it olive oil. So always check the ingredients list to make sure that it just says olive oil, and get a high quality brand. I always like to get tinted glass so that it's dark. It keeps some of the light out and keeps the oil from going rancid. But really the important part is just find a trustworthy brand or read the ingredients to make sure that it actually has an ingredients list. Next up, I have a 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar. I have some dried rosemary. You can also use some fresh rosemary. And I've also got some salt and pepper. Now the salt, we'll probably use about a teaspoon per pound of meat. That's usually about right for steak and whatnot. And then we'll use half as much pepper. And that's a really good rule of thumb when you're cooking with salt and pepper, is do half as much pepper as you're using salt. So just keep that in mind. And lastly, we've got our top sirloin steak. This is about a pound of meat, maybe about 1.2 pounds. And I've cut it in half so that we've got 2 8-ounce steaks that we can cook. Okay, so for the marinade, I'm just gonna measure and combine all ingredients into my mason jar. And this is why I like using mason jar, because you can just put a lid right on there and shake it up to combine everything. All right, so that should be really well mixed in here. Now we're gonna grab a flat bottomed container, preferably something with a lid, otherwise you can cover it with some plastic. And we're going to set our steaks inside of there. Get them as flat as possible, so that way they'll be sitting in as much of the marinade as possible. And we're just gonna pour this on top. I don't know if you can see this real well, but it should be just enough marinade that it's covering the top of the steak. And if it's not, it's no big deal, because we're gonna turn them a couple times through marinating. We're gonna cover this and let it sit in the fridge for at least 30 minutes, up to several hours. And the reason that we're doing this is we want all the flavors to kind of seep into the meat. And the oil is gonna help it's gonna soak into the meat and help keep it moist and really juicy while we're cooking. So while we're letting the steak marinate, it's a really good chance to get caught up on cleaning your kitchen, get some of those dishes out of the way, or start your side dishes, like start your vegetables and your grains, whatever you're cooking with the steak. Get those started, and then when we get those steaks out to cook them, they'll probably take about 10 minutes. So now's a really good chance to start that. So apparently I'm better at cooking than I am at remembering to start my audio recorder, but no matter, I'll just do a voiceover for this section. I'm over here by my pan with the heat turned to high, and right now I'm letting the pan preheat so it's nice and hot before I put the steaks in. Preheating the pan is important to get the searing right. Once I can feel the heat coming off the pan well, I'm going to use my tongs to drop the steaks in, but save the marinade. If you don't have tongs, just use your fingers to carefully place the steaks in, and then use a spatula to flip the steaks later. If you use your fingers later, you will burn yourself. As you can see, there's a fair amount of smoke and steam and a loud sizzle. And just to be clear, I did not add any oil to the pan since there's plenty in the marinade. I'm gonna let these sit for a minute or two before flipping them and then cooking them the same on the other side. Notice the blackened parts of the steak. These are the sear marks and where a lot of the steaky flavor comes from. At this point, even though I haven't finished searing the steaks, because cast iron retains heat really well, I'm gonna turn the heat down to medium and then let the steaks finish searing. By the time the pan is cooled to the right temperature, the steaks should be done searing. Now, normally I prefer my steak rare, but for some reason medium rare tastes better to me for sirloin. So I'm shooting for an internal temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit or 57 degrees Celsius. It should take around 8 to 10 minutes to get there. But I'll remove my steaks when they are about 5 degrees below the target temp. And that's because the center of the steaks will continue to cook for a couple minutes after I take them out. This process of removing the steaks early and letting them sit is called resting. And in addition to getting the temperature right, it's going to allow the juices to redistribute throughout the meat, creating a really juicy steak. You've heard patience is a virtue. Well, it's also a cooking technique. Now that the searing is done, I'm going to flip them every once in a while and pour some of the marinade over them throughout. I'm going to use a meat thermometer to check the inside temp by sticking it so the tip of the thermometer is in the center of the steak, avoiding any spots of fat. And one last thing to mention, try to have a window open or a fan going to keep the steak smoke from setting off the fire alarm. Once the steaks are at temperature, I'm going to pull them out and take my pan off the heat. Alright, we've waited a couple minutes, now it's time to cut these. So when I'm cutting a sirloin steak, I like to just kind of cut strips. Do kind of thin strips. Just last little bits for me. Oh yeah. That's delicious. Which means that it's time for me to eat. I gotta go. If you like the video, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more cooking tips and recipes. Click on the link inside if you want to get that recipe for garlic roasted asparagus that goes well with this. I've got that in the oven right now, about to get it out. And that's about it.